Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Todd's Pod. We have a special guest with us today. It's Pastor Ray Torres from Sold Out Believers. He does a lot of work here in San Antonio with the less fortunate, homeless, the people that need to be in recovery. He is one that actually helps many, many people. So come on in here, Ray. Let's talk.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm a hugger, man. All right. So, Ray, we've met before, a little briefly, here and there at this organization that I'm a part of. And you always kind of interested me because I saw you and I saw your guys, and I even see your guys now, even without you sometimes. They're out there and they're literally saving lives. So tell us what you do. Tell us what led to all this and where you're from and all that kind of stuff. Let's hear it.
Well, I was born in the west side of San Antonio. My parents moved around, so I jumped from the west side to the southwest side. And then at my middle school years, we moved back into the west side of San Antonio. And so there I was, pretty much going to school there. And then I got in trouble. I was a part of a group called GTAs, which is a Grand Theft Auto. So, so you put the story together there. But so long story short, I ended up getting in trouble, getting hired at a golf course. They sent me to do some community service there. And just so happened one of my best friends worked there, him and his father, and they were actually my next door neighbors. So they pulled for me to get hired there, and I actually got hired at the golf course. And so during the process, I was, got hired there, finished up school, and I went and did a little bit of college, and then I met my wife. Now married 30, 31, 32 years now.
Wow, that's cool.
We've been married, and so in the process of being married, when we first got together, we had my son, which is now the lead pastor at our church, which is Sold Out Believers, and then now his church is New Directions Church. Our church is New Directions. So so he was born a premature kid, baby, weighed a pound 13 ounces, was 13 and a half inches long, and so my wife and I, of course, was continuing working and stuff. So my wife and I were on the verge of divorce through our problems in the situation, coming from my background and her coming from her background. So we ended up just finding Jesus, in the process. My uncle had a church, and we were invited, and we decided to make a change then. And so as we made a change, the Lord started to change us and do things within us. So it was a process for us to come and really just give our lives to Jesus, not knowing what was taking place, but we knew that we needed some kind of change. If not, we're going to end up a statistic for all the other marriages that have failed, and we had the refusal to quit. And so we ended up going to church and giving our lives to Christ, and got married, gave our lives to Christ, and so in the process of that, we ended up just getting involved. And so for a little while, my uncle's church closed down. So we were looking for. I remember us driving down Culebra Road, and one of my best friends was right there. Was there. They were doing a car wash, and so it was a little bitty church on Hamilton and Culebra, and they had service there, and so we stopped. Ironically, we were on 410 Callahan Road, and I just went off the side road, and it's like we were talking earlier that the Lord led us there, to be there in that place. And so the Lord led us there, and they invited us to church, and we went to a church. The name of the church was Victory in the City.
Yep.
And so Victory in the City at the time was from California, and the pastors there really, we took an interest to them. They took an interest to us. We just plugged in the church right away. We started to serve right away, and the Lord started to really, mold us and shape us and train us there, And so, in the process, they had rehab homes for men and women, and so we ended up I took an interest in that because I know that the Lord had started the process within my wife and I. And so we ended up just staying plugged into there. Well, about maybe a year later, the pastor from the church, they called him to go to New York, and they brought a different set of pastors from San Diego to here. And so we were trained, and they became our spiritual fathers, Pastor Guillermo and Petra Tenorio, they're our spiritual parents. And so we started to get more involved, backing them up, and doing the things that God wanted us to do. And so we were doing crusades, and we began to see a need of young teenagers that needed Jesus. We see the need for women that were on drugs, prostituting themselves, and they needed to have a different way out. And so my wife and I lived in Kirby area. We had a 2-bedroom house. We converted the garage into a 3-bedroom, 1 bath. And so what we did is we accepted the challenge that God had for our lives, and we opened up our home for a teenage home. And so we started to take teenagers in from all over, from El Paso and San Antonio itself. But we ended up working with the young girls. And so we finished off that stage, and then we got into, we just like a different stage of graduation for us for rehab.
Yeah.
And so, we were 21, 18 and 21 at the time when we were in ministry. And so, and at the time, we were 22 and 23 running a women's home with ladies coming in that were a lot older than us, and they had more experience out there in the world than we did. But we weren't there to bring experience of the world. We were there to bring a relationship with Christ and to teach them what needed to be done in our ministry. And so we were, getting people. And one of the things that was excellent for us, that we were getting the people ladies that were coming in, and God was delivering them from drug addiction. We had a girl that nobody in Texas would take anybody with HIV, and so when they called us up and asked us if we would take her, I said, yeah. I remember I was sick in the room with fever, and for I think a whole week I just was out, and the girl came in, and so we ended up helping her, and then the Lord set her free from HIV. It was untested. So, but remember just getting having to learn about what to do is that you can't get HIV by touching.
Right.
It would have to be,
Yes.
saliva, a lot of saliva, or it would have to be, cuts or something that could be transmitted. And so everybody was afraid. We took the chance.
Back then it was horrible. It was just
Right.
Nobody knew. Yes.
And so the Lord, set her free, delivered her, and we started to see miracle after miracle. And we went from there to doing, I was telling you, we used to do crusades to all around the city of San Antonio. We did a lot of dramas. We rented, Henry B. Gonzalez. I take it back. We rented the Municipal Auditorium. We rented Nelson Wolf Stadium and different Lori Auditorium. We rented all these things, these auditoriums to have these dramas where we would literally bring in a huge number of thousands of people, hundreds of people to do these shows. And we've seen a lot of people give their lives to Christ and come to Jesus from that era that we were there, doing those things. So then my pastors that were our pastors, they had gotten sent back for whatever reason, and they brought in a new set of pastors. So here I am going through, this is my fourth set of pastors. And I can tell you that in all the stuff that I did and I learned the first one taught me salvation, the second one taught me family, the third one taught me evangelism and discipleship, and the last one taught me what not to do, basically. And so I took those stones and I put them in my shepherd's bag, and so we ended up leaving that ministry that we were, so faithful and so loyal to, and just believed that God was going to do great miracles. We ended up leaving that ministry, and the Lord set us on a path to start our own ministry. So basically, when I left that ministry, I felt like they had shot me and left me there to die. Both my family and I. The friends that I had in ministry were no longer my friends, could no longer talk to me. So I was like, man, this is not God. And so they said, if you leave this ministry, you're gonna backslide. You're never gonna go back. It's just not gonna be the same for you. And so I remember going to a church and just raising up my hands and just believing what God had for me. And so I remember going there, and the Lord said, the Lord speaking to me, clearly speaking to me, and said, I'm everywhere. And so the Lord started to heal my heart, and He started to give me my identity there, And so, which is, I'll talk about this a little bit, but so we ended up going back, and we ended up starting our ministry, and we said, Pastor, why don't you come? We'll pioneer the church for you. You run it. We'll serve under you. And so, but my pastor said, yeah, he said the first guy, and then I guess the Lord spoke to him and told him, you're going to stay there. He said, this is your ministry now. You're going to do it. You're doing it. And so you and your wife can do it. And I felt like we weren't ready that wasn't our time,
Right.
So we ended up going, and we ended up doing, this ministry, and it just wasn't happening for us. No matter what we did, no matter what we tried, we were evangelizing, we were doing all the things. It just wasn't our timing. And so I ended up stepping out, my wife and I ended up getting I used to be an insurance agent before I started it. So I lost my insurance license. I couldn't get it anymore. And so I ended up going to unemployment. I just don't know what to do. And so they ended up sending me to a test. I tested real good for plants and for driving. And they wanted to send me to school for plants. I said, how long is it going to take? It's about 2 years. I said, I don't have time for 2 years. I got to support a family. And how long is the truck driving? 3 weeks. I said, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So I ended up taking the 3 weeks of truck driving. And thank God for a sister-in-law that she was such a blessing to me. She ended up, after graduating, she ended up giving, putting me down as a reference. And I was able to get a job through aggregate haulers. And so then the Lord started putting a really deep, desire for me to start my own trucking company. And so I learned for about 6 months to a year, and then we were able to buy a truck and start my own business doing trucking with here in San Antonio. And I started to do really well. Got hired on by different companies. They really loved the way I did service, and I really worked hard to try to get that. I got so busy that I wasn't able to drive anymore. I had to get off because I was worth more money off the truck than I was on the truck. And so that's what I did. In the process of that, my wife and I ended up backsliding and going back into the world. And so I remember just going through those times. I felt like the Lord was like disciplining me, and I felt like God had left me, and I was so afraid of turning my way back to the Lord, because what if I turn back and I don't do right, and I'm just gonna go back and forth. So long story short, I remember one day, just forwarding, the Lord spoke to me. I was asleep in my room. Mind you, we had bought 40 acres. We had cows, horses. I'm from the west side of San Antonio, so I'm not a rancher, nor I'm a farmer. So I didn't know what I was doing, but I just felt like the Lord was teaching me. He was teaching me to be a shepherd. And so I ended up going and doing that. And so, but then the Lord woke me, and He clearly again spoke to me again, and He says, "Wake up, go to church, and pay your tithe. If not, I'm taking everything from you." I remember waking up after hearing that noise, that sound, and just telling my son Tim and Paul and Lauren, Tim, Paul, and Lauren, get up, get ready. We're going to go to church. And so my wife said that. Well, my wife said, "I'm not going," and I said, "Fine, that's okay." I heard the voice of the Lord. I'm not going to lose what everything to me is my family. Uh, and so I could care less about materialistic things. And so and my wife said that at that moment that she felt like a heat of a heat of coal coming around her, and saying, telling her the same thing. And so she just said, "No way, she's going to come with me." And so she jumped in the vehicle to come with us to church. We ended up driving from Atkins to West Overhills. And so that's pretty about an hour away,
Yeah.
And so we ended up going there, and then we were just going there, and I could just again, I didn't go to the back. I went straight to the front, raised up my hands, and I said, "Here I am, Lord." And so anyway, the fast forwarding, the Lord began to speak to us, and "Hey, I want you to start your church, and I want you to do this." I'm like, "Oh no, God!" I was so afraid of it. And then the Lord used my little sister and my little cousin to, "Hey, start having Bible studies," and my mother to start having Bible studies, and I didn't want to. So I took it into prayer, and I remember still to the day I can still go up to that secret prayer closet that I had at my house, and I could put my nose right on that wall, and I would pray and say, "God, how am I going to do it? What am I going to do? What's going to take place?" And so I just remember the Lord, when the first sermon, I told my wife, "You do it." I was so afraid to even preach a word because I thought the Lord was going to strike me down. That's how much fear I had of the Lord. And so I remember the first message I gave was, and we were able to we see the hand that got moved. Well, we outgrew the place, and we ended up driving to Oblate. We were going to come eat at a restaurant from Atkins all the way to Oblate over here at North Star Mall.
Yep.
So we were there, and I'm driving by, and I see this building, and it seemed like it was vacant. So I ended up calling it, and the gentleman said that he would rent it to us, and so he would take care of it for us. And so when I was doing trucking, I had a friend of mine that he was doing asphalt, and I did some loads for that pastor. And I tell the pastor I'm going to bless him. And so, long story short, when I called my friend to come fix the asphalt, they goes, "Yeah, I told the pastor, I know somebody that can fix the asphalt." "Oh yeah, we'll go and call him." What happened to be the same guy that I did the work for, and that guy came and goes, "Hey, you know who that is, Pastor?" He says, "That's Pastor Pete, the one you did the work for." I'm like, "Oh," he goes. And then I reminded him about that, and so he ended up giving me the building for very inexpensive. In the North Star area, it's and so we ended up getting that building there. And then one of my buddies, he says, "Hey, I got something for you," and he bought I think 300 chairs for us that came, and then the stage was already built, and then we had our worship leader that came in, and she used to work at Best Buy. And so she ended up coming and teaching my wife to worship, and I was paying her for a little bit. I said, "Hey, I can't pay you no more. I'm out of money." And so she said, "No worries." She ended up staying with us, and so she ended up. And the Lord told me, "Just leave her alone." And so she started building the team. And the Lord, by the time you knew it, she built a team. And so we had worship music every service, and the church started to grow. And so in the process of that, the Lord reminded me again about rehab. And so in the process of that, I ended up, helping. I still helped out people that were homeless because they would come to work for me. I would send them to school, and so I would, help them out, and they would drive my trucks, And so we stayed in rehab all these years, and so we ended up the Lord spoke to me about rehab, so I started hitting the streets, and I started bringing in men to our program, to our house, to do the same thing again. And we started, reaching out to them, and we got to where like we need to reach out to women too. And then women and children were coming in, so we just end up going back to that. So I've been in rehab, all these years of my life, and I've been able to see hundreds of men and women come in, give their lives to Christ, and just develop the programs that God has given us to work with, And so we ended up moving from there, Oblate, to Donaldson, and from Donaldson to another place where it was Budo Land is what they called this the place, and it was a bar in the bottom, and it really looked like it was enclosed bars all the way around the building. And so the gentleman sold me the building, and the rehab, the people I had in rehab, they all helped me build the building along with my two sons. So we ended up having service there and using that building for the honor and glory of the Lord. And so we ended up completing our mission there, and we ended up going to Gilman Road, which where I'm at now. And so the same thing happened there. The building was broken into, all the air conditioning, all the electrical, all the walls, not all of them, but most of the walls, the ceiling tower were gone. And so they were just going in there and having a field day. We ended up getting there, and we ended up holding that building and building stuff there. And we were living in Marion with our homes. We had a rehab home. We had the rehab homes there. And so we probably had over 40 men and women, there. And so we ended up coming from Marion to Gembler. And all the men and women we got the building within 3 weeks. We put the sanctuary up. All the electrical was done. We had no air conditioners yet, but we got some of them, and so we ended up getting some of the air conditioners there. And that's where we've been at for the last 12, 13 years that we've been in this ministry, But we have seen literally hundreds of men growing and coming to the face of the Lord, coming to and get rehab and being able to be transformed by the Lord. Some of those men and women and our pastors in our church, they're leading our church. They are now working, for different programs here. Some are in leadership positions, some are teachers, and so we've seen the hand of God move. And so what I did is I train in leadership, and so just being able to train in leadership is a good thing, because I'm able to train, those treasures out of darkness, those riches stored in secret places, those people that are diamonds in the rough. We're able to take them and shine them up and give them back to the Lord as good, so they can do good things,
Got a question for you. Popped into my head. So I personally, well, for one, I think you would agree, it's fantastic to see that beginning brokenness and what they become in the end, right? And I believe that everybody, has their own path. It may not look like your path, and it may not look like my path, but they have their own path. But I also believe I'm a very spiritual guy, and I also believe at the end of the day, God's going to do what God does. And so I allow people to do what is best for them on their paths. Do you support other people and other pathways to their recovery, knowing that your God will help them in the end and expose himself to him in the way that they need it?
So as far as programs and stuff, yeah, I mean, of course, not everybody. I always say there's different strokes for different folks,
Right.
And so after evaluating someone that comes in, not everybody comes in, in rehab for drugs or alcohol. Some people come in because they have, sexual problems. Some people come in because they have, different things. They've been abused or they're abusive. And so we get families that that or fathers or mothers that come in, they've lost their kids through CPS. So, of course, we have to put them on a different path. But helping everybody to achieve their goals is what we have. And so the spirituals is a whole different. It's a mindset that people have to take in order for it to help. Like anything that you try, we used to say, if you try something for 30 days, it's going to become a habit.
Right.
And so anything that you break out of 30 days, it's going to be a habit.
Right.
And so in the process of, the main thing is getting your mind stable, because once you come in, your mind is in shambles. It's a different, it's in a different place. And then for you to being able to break that stuff down from what they're going through, and help them to develop get them on a path to begin to break those generational curses, and to be able to remove those roots that are deeply rooted from their lives. That's a whole different story,
It is. The reason I asked you that question was because I wanted to put everybody who's out there that says, oh, he's just this or he's just that, because we're really not.
Yeah.
We can't be everything to everybody, right? But we can share our experience, strength, whatever that looks like, and not say, okay, it has to be, because like you were talking about, I mean, I don't talk bad about anybody, but that previous place that you were at, that you said when you left, they no longer would communicate or talk. I agree with you. That's not God, right? And that's one of those ones where people they see that and they're like, oh yeah, well that's too iron fisted, and they tend to get that taste in their mouth, and sometimes it's really hard to get that out of them, to say, hey, not every organization or every pathway is like that. So that's why I asked that question, because I wanted to rest assured that you, like me, would believe that people will, God will do what God does,
And God can do something in a different class, because God is everywhere,
and everything.
And
Yes.
so and God can speak to anybody through anybody, right? And so we always have the acronym FACT, faithful, available, and teachable.
Okay.
And so if you're faithful and you're available and you're teachable, the littlest kid can teach you something, from the older, the older adult can teach you something, from the middle age, from somebody that's not saved can give you a word of wisdom. And so, you just always have to be attentive to what, I call it thing, I take a lot of key cards or mental things of what I see, if I'm walking through an airport, if I'm walking in the store, and I hear somebody just talking about it, and so I can listen to the voice within the voice and say, oh, this is, and then take that and say, man, I'm going to use that and really break it down and analyze it so that I can, because it spoke to me, and so that's important for us to understand too, to be able to get that, okay, well, here it is, and not understanding that, we have a program, but it doesn't mean that there's other programs out there that are not effective, that are not as effective as ours. We're effective as just well as those other effective programs I have. And so there's people that might go to a different program and they come out amazing,
Right.
And so it doesn't mean that we're going to down that program or we're going to say something, negative about that program. We're just going to trust that the Lord is everywhere and that He's working on everything through everybody,
I think that one of my beliefs or mantras, I guess, is that I truly believe that every church has something wrong, but every church has something right. I don't think there's no perfect anything out there. It's just not, that's not part of the human condition. Like you were talking about your backslide. To me, I see that as the human condition, because we are flawed, period. We will never be perfect in any way, but we have to accept the fact that we are flawed. And sometimes I tell people that, and they're like, "Oh, well, my church is," I'm like, hold on a little bit, because I've had people literally tell me that their way is the only way, and I'm like, you can't. To me, that's like breaking it right there, because we're not to judge. We can't judge others. We can guide others and such, even in recovery, religious, spiritual, whatever, right? But it's not our place to judge people
Yeah.
because we don't know where they're at.
And I don't think also that again, like I said, we're a church, but we're not the only church.
Right.
We are the body.
Exactly.
And so the body has different parts of
Mhm.
in that. And so whether we're the head or, we're the hands or the feet, or we're the heartbeat or whatever it may be, we still all doing the same work. And so for one church to say I'm it or I'm the only, that's not, there's a wrong mindset in that.
It is.
And what happens to that is then they send off, they send off somebody that got hurt. And so what does that hurt? We have the saying that hurt people hurt people. And so now we're not talking with the true pure spirit, but we're talking with a hurt, bitter spirit. And so, and we say stuff because we're hurt instead of really understanding the process of knowing that every church there's things in it that they struggle with. Every church there's things in it that they're very good at, and so that's the process of understanding the same thing with an individual. This individual might have gone to from this home to this program to this program, I call those traveling evangelists, because that's all they're doing. They travel and they get what they can get. But as soon as you start to deal with the character issues and the hurt issues and the things that they shy away from that. And it's not that they don't want to surrender. It's just that they're shying away because they don't want to be exposed to a new self. If you're able to help them remove those areas in their lives, and I've seen many people run from that. As soon as they start to feel the love, it's like, all right, I just can't take it,
Right. Well, that's that more of that human condition right there. And I think that for speaking from an eye standpoint, for instance, there's things in my past, especially in my childhood, the abuses and things like that there were people that knew nothing about it, right? And I would never have to say anything to anybody because usually they're dead, right? Nobody would ever know, but it was inside of me. And I use that analogy because if I didn't get that out of me, I don't believe I'd be sitting where I am. I don't even believe that I'd be sober today. So I emphasize, just like what you just said, you got to get those things out. But it's so difficult to allow yourself to be vulnerable to let those things out. So I quickly talk about my horrors in life, the things that were bad, the things that happened here, because by doing so, if you suffered some of the same things that I suffered and you've never let it out of you, if you hear me let it out of me or talk about it, it makes you as a man a little more comfortable doing it.
It gives you the confidence to be able to speak.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do within our programs, we have a curriculum sheet that we give out. And so in that curriculum sheet, we have one of the programs is Who Am I process. And basically because I can ask, who am I? Well, I'm a child of God. Now, who are you? And so who are you goes even deeper than just being a child of God, because you see there are circumstances in this life that formed us, that helped us get to where I'm at. And so I'm walking around as a person with bitter heart, hurt, and every time I start to see those points and those pressure points in my life that I see they're coming out. It may be something that's coming out that, like the hurt that you explained earlier. And so those things start to hit, and you start to hit those triggers, and like, okay, this is who I am. And you start to tense up of the situation. And also, we have another thing that we talk about is we talk about the tree of life, which is the roots, and because there's deep things that are within our hearts that only God knows and that we don't want to pull out. And so when you're talking to an individual or you're talking to an individual in a setting, sometimes some people don't want to talk in a setting. So it has to be a one-on-one counseling, And so, and even the one-on-one counseling, sometimes it's very hard to break those barriers and break those yokes of bondages because they're so deeply rooted, so deeply rooted. So, but once you start figuring out one root and figuring out this root and figuring out this, but the problem is that we didn't run to alcohol, we didn't run to drugs, we didn't run to certain circumstances because we wanted them. We ran because we wanted to hide from a pain,
Right.
from the things that happened to our life. And so when we start to uproot those things, that's when we start to feel more secure, more freedom in our lives from that whole process. Because that's when you start to see you start to begin to see real transformation. It's a change that's happening on the inside, and now you can really see it on the outside because there's a certain demeanor, there's a certain aura that sits around you when you know that you're just not walking in that old mindset anymore.
Exactly. Oh, I totally agree
You
with
know?
that. I tell people that along those same lines about, how you feel comfortable sharing or getting things out of you, right? And I'm quick to tell anybody that I deal with, you don't need to tell me everything because there's going to be things you don't want to tell me. But as a pastor, there's things that I won't tell this guy over here, but as a pastor, I'll tell you,
Mm-hmm.
or a counselor, I'll tell them. And so I had probably 5 or 6 different outlets because I have a lot of stuff, right? And so, but my sponsor told me, you don't have to tell. I didn't have to tell them every. Sometimes they go, "Oh, you got to tell me your own." No, because I wouldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
But he told me, "Hey, go find where you want to let these things out. Just make sure you let them out." And in doing so, it allowed me to get those things out. I think that people will find their avenue, but we just have to keep encouraging them to do that.
And one of the things I always talk about is before you ask for the hand, you gotta capture the heart.
Yep.
Right? And so that's one of the things that there's a thing that we say in our ministry is we have a thing that goes in we love, we connect, and we encourage, right? But in between love and encourage is the connect part. If you don't connect to that individual for whatever reason, that individual is not going to connect with you because there's no confidence being built in the connection. There's a thing that takes place when you're able to connect with somebody. And then I remember a story with they would tell me, hey, this guy won't go to church. He's been invited by all kinds of people, and he won't go to church. He goes, I don't think you can get him to go to church. All right, cool. I said, hey, bro, what kind of music do you like? Oh, I really like heavy metal music. Oh, yeah, well, you like Metallica? You like this? You like that? Yeah, man, I went to the concert. Wow. So I started to connect with him at what he was coming. And so, like the Apostle Paul says, to the Jew I became a Jew, to the Gentile I became a Gentile, right? And so I started to connect with him with the little bit I knew about that. And so we connected and didn't even invite him to church. And so the next meeting, we were at another barbecue. He said, man, is the pastor coming? Yeah, he's going to come. Well, man, I want to talk to him. And so he became to really show interest now in us because we were talking about what he wanted, what he liked.
Yep.
And so maybe 3 or 4 meetings, he ends up showing up at church. And he smiles at me and waves, hey, I was excited. And he said, whatever you did, you did. I reached an atheist like that.
Yeah.
I had an atheist that come to our church. That atheist was more faithful than any of our church members. But he came to church, and I connected the same way. Hey, bro, you like Michael Jackson? And this guy, and he was like, no, I'm an atheist. Yeah, no. Never talked to him about the Lord. He would ask his friends, is he ever going to talk to me about the Lord? He was waiting for me to talk to him about, I believe, he was waiting for me to talk to him about the Lord so that he could find an argument point with me.
Of course.
I wasn't going to give him that.
Right.
That field to play in. And so I started to attack him the other way. I started, hey, man, you play real good. And, man, it's pretty awesome. And so, but I remember one service, I looked up and I looked at the altar and he was bawling, crying, gave his life to the Lord. Now that gentleman is married, he's married, has a child, and he's one of our worship. He leads our worship team, him and his wife and another lady in our church, and he's been there faithfully to our church for all these years, And so, but it's just the way you connect with people. I believe that if you have a strong connection with him, then and it's a genuine connection,
Right.
and it's not fake, you know. And it's not. I'm not trying to get something out of you. It's just gonna come out of you, flow out of you, and being able to do the things that we're doing. You know what I mean? And
So that's just what I was talking about earlier about, you don't necessarily have to just tell somebody, hey, drop to your knees right now, because God will do what God does.
Yeah.
We just have to be faithful to what God wants us to do. Because I think through faith and love, we'll quench the hottest fire, man. It will do it, because I mean, you can't, speaking from a spiritual sense, I don't think that you can have love and no spirituality. There's everybody. I mean, it's just in our more than human condition, right? Everybody knows something's there. Even the atheist knows there's something there,
yeah,
but he's not willing to accept what the world is telling, or whoever's telling him that he has to accept. But that goes right back to my thoughts on recovery and things like that, is that everybody has to find their path, and when they find their path, God will lead them when it's time, like you and I were talking earlier.
Yeah.
So you had a connection with God your entire life. Well, yeah, I did, but it wasn't until it was time for me to discover and experience, and it wasn't like I one day I just gave up and said, okay, God, I totally surrendered to you. It wasn't like that for me, because I got baptized very, very young in a lake in Alaska, because I knew my dad I knew my dad was going to kill me. And the older boys told me, since I wasn't at home anymore, that I'm not a child of God, I was eligible to go to hell. I come unglued, man, because I knew my dad was going to kill me. And so I had to be baptized. I had to be saved at that moment. And so the camp people all came, and they're like, you got to quit screaming and crying. We're supposed to be going to bed. I'm like, I wouldn't. Finally, the head of the camp came and asked me what was going on, and I told him, I got to be saved. These guys told me I'm no longer a child of God. I can't live like that. And he said, oh, that's not true, and I wouldn't accept that, because they had said it, and it was in my head. So he took me out that lake at night in Alaska and saved me right there and there.
Man.
So, and some people say, well, you need to be baptized. No, I don't think I need to be baptized again. I knew exactly what I was doing and why I was doing it. But the thing is that I didn't walk. I've been in many churches. I've studied all kinds of religions and all those things, right? But it wasn't until God was ready for me to have that. Just like the atheist you were talking about, there was something that God exposed himself, and it was time to expose.
I believe when God is ready, there's a super bloom season that comes up on your life. So super bloom season is when you're in the desert, and have you ever seen a desert? The desert is no water, nothing lives in there. But in the super bloom season, everything blooms.
Yeah.
Water runs through it, flowers, grass, and it's just a supernatural thing that takes place in the super bloom season. And so that's the super bloom season for an individual's life, right? That season is just right for the Lord to bloom in your life. You're just ready to surrender. You've tried everything, and you're just waiting for that moment of truth to come, that love can make that connection within you, and and then that spirituality comes in, and it just begins to just do mind-blowing things, and the Lord shows up with signs, miracles, and wonders, and we start to see the hand of God just flourish us inside of us in our hearts, and the Holy Spirit begins to search even the deep thoughts and the things that are not supposed to be in there, and He begins to throw them out, and He begins to make us white as snow, so that we're able to develop a relationship with the Lord. Because at the end of the day, God will not move in a vessel that's dirty, right? But He'll send the Holy Spirit ahead of that individuals to make that spirit clean, and that vessel becomes clean, so that God would operate and fill that cup with a renewed mind, with a different mindset that comes in, and that God does the same things for that person, And so I believe even in our ministry, in the whole how many years that as we get where God has called us, where God has chosen us to be, we're seeing super things happen in our church. We're seeing lives get saved. They come and men and women are coming. They're really grasping a hold of the things of Christ. People are just getting more committed to things. Recently, we went into to Mexico, and we ended up opening up a house in Mexico church in Piedras Negras. And my wife has been going there every week. and we have a team there in Mexico, and so we're starting to see a super room season there. In the month that we've been there, we've been able to open up now 2 churches. Another church came under us in Acuña, and then so we have Piedras in Acuña now. But what we're seeing in the Piedras Negras is we're seeing a lot of kids, 30, 40 kids come to Christ. Every day they come to the place. We're able to feed them, we're able to minister to them, and we're able to just give them that love of Christ. What connected them? You know, we connected with them, of course, with food, because they're hungry. Some of those kids don't eat at all. And so we go out there and we become and we become a resource for them to come, and we're able to feed them, lunch, dinner, and not only now we're feeding them, but now we started classes with them where we're going to start a soccer league, and we're going to start we just started music classes with them that we're teaching those kids to do music classes. So we're seeing a supernatural hand of God move over there, but it's a supernatural season. That season, that place was ready for a new thing, and so I thank God that He's been able to use us with for that. And my wife and I are together. We're going and breaking down and helping the churches in Mexico.
Cool.
So we're going back and forth.
2 more questions. One, are not really questions, I guess maybe they're observations more than anything else, but what I think I see and what I feel inside, I think we have a similarity there, because you talked about that point in time in you and your wife's life where you were afraid to go and go back to God, right? And I think that all of us in some way experience that when it comes to that time to start making that change, right?
Mm-hmm.
But would you agree with the statement that once you overcame that fear and you went, it's so much easier to follow and do what God wants you to do than it was to be afraid?
Definitely. For me, it's just being a man that fears the Lord. And so, once the fear for me, man, I don't want to do this again, Lord, and mess up, or retract, or go back, or relapse, or I don't want to do that no more. I want to be able to live a life in freedom, and so, and then the Lord, doing things for me to know that He's there. For example, using the church as when we first got that building, I said, Lord, what if I go and I mess up? I don't want to mess up, God, but what are people going to say? And the Lord spoke to me, I'm going to shut every mouth that opens their mouth, and this is the way I want to do it. So I went into Fox Network, and I ended up using getting commercials there, and very low budget, but the Lord gave me 100 commercials at a very reasonable price. And so He just ended up moving in my part in the rehab commercial. And so that's me. I've been in rehab all my life. Why move away from the things that I know that are successful, and the things that I know that are going to work, and the things that I know that have been successful in people's lives? So gaining that confidence, oh man,
That's amazing. I mean, for me too.
Yeah.
There's a certain confidence that I have now. I walk boldly in my path because I know that God is with me. My version of God, my version of whatever it is that I choose to call, because everybody has their own version, right? They're like, oh, well, don't. But I truly believe at the end of the day, it all boils right back to where we're at, right? There are those certain steps that people have to take to get there. But I proudly and boldly walk now, and I'm not afraid of taking those steps because I know these things are given to me by God. But and I would be remiss not to mention what's going on right now. I am a Christian, and we're during the weekend of a very, very, very moment in time for us that we celebrate. And, you know, I'm excited for tomorrow. And, you know, it's amazing that our Savior was risen in 3 days. And it's funny because if people will look back at their lives, how things happen in 3, and number 3 is huge.
You know, I always say to myself, and I always think to myself mentally and physically, that if a person is not spiritually and mentally structured, there's nothing going to happen.
Right.
So by the meaning of that is being consistent, and what we do on a consistent basis is important. Anything we do, again, like I said, anything you do for 30 days, it becomes a habit, and it can become structurally you know, it can become a structural habit for you to be able to continue to do those things. Like I get up in the morning, I pray in the morning, I read, and I write my prayers, jot my prayers for my family, jot my prayers for my church, you know, every morning, you know, the church we put in our congregation, you know. And so I physically, and I think about, you know, the structured mindset of an individual, but also the structured spiritual mindset of an individual. It's 2 things, you know.
Yeah.
What you do with your flesh, what you do with your spiritual life, it's going to reflect your life.
Of course,
You know?
of course. So we're running out of time. So this is your opportunity to tell the world whatever you want to tell them before you go.
I think for me, to understand structure in a person's life, and then to be able to live out what Christ has called us to live out, but to be an example and of what God wants us to do, has a lot for me today. And we've been doing rehab over 30 years now, and I love what I do, and I love that. And I never work a day in my life because I'm doing what I love to do. And so I love to see people come in and really just, the word for me is transform. You know, there's a transformation that takes place. There's a renewed mindset that takes place. And I love to see that happening, not only here, but I'm now starting to experience it internationally, where now my wife and I become international pastors. So,
Yeah,
you know, we're at a different level in
Cool.
God, you know.
All right. Well, all right. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And you're going to have to come back and tell us how things are going.
Amen. Appreciate
How
it.
they're progressing.
Thank you so much. God
Yes,
bless
sir.
you.
You have a great day, okay?
God bless you.
All right, well, everybody, that's this episode of Todd's Pod. I will see you again next Saturday at 10 a.m. and have some other stuff during the week for you. But thank you for watching, and you can, whatever I guess they say, what is that? Like, share, subscribe, or follow, all those things help us out, and we're just glad to be a part of y'all's lives also. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.